continued in the countryside for many years after that. There were heavy casualties on the Filipino side. This war ended in 1902, though the fighting continued in the countryside for many years after that. There were heavy casualties on the Filipino side, not only from gunfire, but from starvation and disease. My grandfather's body was never found. I suspect that he died in the trenches and was buried in some mass grave in the outskirts of Manila. My other grandfather, whose name was Marcod, proved to be a great mystery. He was a Bontoc Igorot warrior who lived in the remote mountains of northern Luzon. He and several families in his tribe were sent to the United States in 1904 as participants in the St. Louis World's Fair. My mother said Marcod was a young chieftain, known for his skills as a warrior and hunter. That and the fact that he never returned home was all I knew about him. In our history lessons at school, my teachers talked about the many primitive tribes that populated the islands. The Negritos, Moros, and Igorots were among the most well-known. I knew that some of my relatives lived in the mountains, but the only way I got to know about them was from the pictures I saw and the books I read. These lessons sparked my interest in finding out more about Philippine tribal life. But as the years passed, all these were forgotten. Though the city was less than a day's drive from the Igorot villages, life in Manila was as far removed from tribal life as one could imagine. I often wondered how my life would have been different had my grandfather Marcod returned home to the mountains. As a child, when I shared my interest about the Igorots with my friends in school, they would ask me if I ever wore a G-string, or if I danced around a blazing fire at night beating a brass gong, or whether my mother served dog meat at home. The sad thing was, I never even met an Igorot in my whole life. I haven't given much thought about Marcod since I was a child. but I suspected that there was a much larger story behind his disappearance. I wanted to find out what really happened to him. Our God is the great God who lives in the sky and shines through the sun. He makes our rice and sugarcane grow, and He gives us the heads of our enemies. He lived a quiet life in his mountain village by the river. For many generations, his people hunted and worked the land, isolated from the rest of the islands. When the Americans first came to our village, we were afraid of them. Their guns made a lot of noise and scared everyone, including the animals in the forest. We did not like them visiting our villages. Later, we realized that they wanted to be our friends. They wanted us to go with them to America, where many were gathered, so we could build a village and show our ways of living. Many of the men in Marcod's clan wanted to see what was beyond the mountains, beyond the neighboring lowlands that was on the water's edge. Marcod wanted to go, but was hesitant because he knew his wife was expecting a child. They were assured that he would be back in time for his birth. With his wife's blessing, Marcod accepted the offer of his journey, this promise of adventure and fortune. That night, the people in his village danced and feasted on many animals. In his letters, Marcod wrote about the trials of his voyage. When they reached San Francisco, a train took them to St. Louis. While on this train, 2 Igorots froze to death in a boxcar.
It's crazy.
Once in St. Louis, he and other Igorots built an entire village from bamboo, wood, and leaves sent over from the Philippines. After months of preparation, the gates of the St. Louis World's Fair finally opened. buildings spread over